This is the Dery Brothers Tribecast, a podcast for diehard Cleveland Indians fans. Presented to you by WaitingForNextYear.com. Now, here are the hosts, Matt and Todd Dery.
And we're back, everybody. Another edition of the Dery Brothers Tribecast. Matt and Todd with you, talking some free agency. Certainly we'll get into Francisco Lindor. And our guest today, the great Adnan Virk, is going to join us from MLB Network, NHL Network, formerly of ESPN. Even was on the radio, too, at MLB Radio. We'll talk to him about the Tribe and certainly the Lindor situation. He was on MLB Network last night when Shane Bieber won the Cy Young. We'll get into the Bieber stuff. Todd, we got to get into Lindor as well. We're brought to you by the Center for Advanced Dentistry, Dr. Ben Hornstein, best in the business. And, of course, BreakingT.com/Dery. Get all your Tribe gear right there. Todd, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Hey, listen, sun is shining. You know, we're moving forward. Everything's all good. I'm just sitting here anxiously anticipating the eventual trade of our superstar shortstop, Francisco Lindor.
You know, everybody wants to talk about it, and I'm sure let's dive into that first. You know, here's free agency started, and other than Robbie Ray re-signing, and, you know, I woke up this morning to a bunch of tweets about the unnamed team being interested in Taijuan Walker. Good luck with that. But there's articles every day, whether it's the Pope, John Paul Morosi, whether it's Jim Bowden in The Athletic. Boy, Zach Meisel's piece in The Athletic this week was awesome with all the different types of trades and whether he thinks that the Indians would do them or not. But it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Will the Mets pull the trigger? Well, they don't have a GM yet. What about the Angels? They don't have a GM yet. Yet those are two of a handful of teams that have interest in them, certainly.
You know, it's going to be very interesting because I think there are a lot of teams that are going to be interested, but there's also going to be, obviously, because of the pandemic, number one, there's going to be some trepidation on how much do you give up for Frankie. You know, we don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. There's the unknown of, will Frankie like it where he's being traded, and will he potentially sign long-term? Then there's also, how much are you willing to give up when we have no idea if this is going to be a full 162 games? I mean, you know, and will there be fans in the stands? And Lindor being such a draw, what's that going to do? So what does that do to his trade value in terms of what the Indians get back? But there won't be a shortage of suitors for, you know, a perennial all-star shortstop, great personality, face of a franchise type player. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of suitors for him, and I know that, you know, there were some that you wanted to discuss and talk about some of these potential deals out there, but I like you said before, it's a matter of when, not if.
We got deals, that's for sure.
Like JR.
R.I.P. All right, so, you know, here's the thing. People are going to tune into the podcast and go, oh, are Matt and Todd going to talk about whether they should trade him? Please. We've had these shows done before. It's over. He's gone. You and I want him gone. And he's not staying here. Like, can we just put that one to bed, please?
It's not that we want him gone. Let's say it differently.
But we know it's the right thing. We know it's the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's the correct and prudent move for this organization in this market. Hey,
such an old bit. Look, you know, Dolan's cheap. We can get that out of the way. We can do the hashtag. But this is reality. David Meter, his agent, okay, has been bent over, let's be honest, by Scott Boras for a long time. He's lost clients to Scott Boras, including lately Nicholas Castellanos. And David Meter wants his day in the sun. No one knows who David Meter is. His biggest client, his best client, is the guy he's known since his days down in Florida in high school. That was Francisco Lindor. David Meter wants to be on that stage. Now, again, it might be on Zoom, unfortunately, but this guy wants to be in the spotlight, and he wants his big client to get that big payday. And the Indians have made their offers. They haven't been good enough. And quite honestly, Lindor over the last 2 years hasn't been good enough, in our opinion, in my opinion at least, to warrant this kind of money that the Indians obviously can't afford to fork over. It's reality.
You know, I think a lot of things will eventually come out. You know, Andre Knott has hinted at when and if he's gone, you know, things will come to light. And, We've talked about maybe he doesn't like, he didn't like the pressure of playing for a free agent deal, knowing that he has all this money on the line. And, I'm sure the Indians offered him low ball offer a couple of years ago that we all know that he turned down and all that. But, it's like you said, it's got to happen, right? I mean, my biggest concern in the entire thing, to be honest with you, is when the haul comes back, the quote unquote haul, it's not going to be nearly as much as everyone thinks it's going to be. And as much of a negative effect as the trade is going to have on the franchise and, the Dolan's cheap crowd and the people that don't really love the franchise to begin with will immediately pile on. But I don't know what kind of haul it's going to be when you consider it's only still 1 year. I mean, you look at what the Red Sox got back from the Dodgers for Mookie Betts, which is essentially was a couple of prospects and Alex Verdugo, who had a really good year for Boston, might I add. If the Indians, if today I told you we were going to get Alex Verdugo and 2 prospects you never heard of for Frankie, what do you think the reaction's going to be around here? And the Indians shouldn't care about that, but you know what it'll be like. It'll be people will freak out.
But I don't think people are realistic about it. I think people think, the Indians are going to trade Francisco Lindor and get this giant haul back. Now you throw in the pandemic, you bring up a great point. It's not going to be anything special. And we'll talk to Adnan about it. I would be hopeful that it would be better than what they got back for Clevenger at the major league level. You've got to have a player. Now, whether Tyler Freeman,
I agree with that.
Whether Tyler Freeman is ready to take over shortstop, whether they sign a free agent like the guys at Let's Go Tribe did today said Freddie Galvis on a 1-year deal, whether you could get somebody on the cheap, whether you move Ramirez to short, whatever it is, whether Yu Chang plays there for a year, who knows? But you got to get back somebody that you can plug into the everyday lineup. Whether it's you want to make a trade with the Mets, I want Jeff McNeil back. Jeff McNeil is 28. He's an 830 OPS guy, and he's signed through 2024. You want to make
positions too,
right, and can play the outfield or infield. Kevin Biggio is a big leaguer signed through 2024 with the Jays, or Lourdes Gurriel, somebody like that, where it's not. You're right. It probably wouldn't be anybody that the fringe fan has heard of, although Jeff McNeil obviously has come on as of late. You're not going to get McNeil and Dom Smith. You're not going to get Biggio and Gurriel, and that's just reality. But if you can get one of those guys, if you could get Jared Walsh from the Angels, and I know he's finished 7th in the Rookie of the Year voting, but he's a first baseman you plug in every single day, and is probably a 30 home run guy, and then some prospects after that. I don't think you're going to get Joe Adell, who's the Angels' top prospect, but that's at least you get one player back that you can plug into that lineup next season. You have to.
Yeah, I think that the Joe Adell train left the station. If you were going to get him, that would have had to have been a year ago. Now he's up with the Angels Major League Club, and they need him. They have a lot of overpriced guys on that roster, so they need. I'll tell you a guy who I would love from the Angels is David Fletcher. Guy hits. He's a machine.
Yep.
And he plays all over the diamond too. That's another guy you can basically, he's like a younger Whit Merrifield type. I would love to have him on our team. I just don't know, if I don't know how realistic any of these deals are going to be. That's my biggest concern.
Matt and Todd with you, Dery Brothers Tribecast. You're on waitingfornextyear.com. We're going to have Adnan Virk on momentarily. Let's get into what's the most important thing here, and that is what Dr. Ben Hornstein thinks of this Lindor stuff.
I know Dr. Ben would love a Frankie Lindor for life contract, but Dr. Ben lives in Cleveland. He knows this market. He understands. Not only does he understand the baseball market, he understands the dental market in Cleveland, and that's why he's the best dentist, not only on the east side of Cleveland, not only in all of Cleveland, not only the entire Midwest, but all of America. So do yourself a favor. If you need a dentist and you are worried about COVID, but you got to go, you want to go someplace that's going to be safe, clean, where they take unbelievable care of you, put you at ease, go to the Center for Advanced Dentistry over there in Orange Place. Check them out at cfad.net online or at CFAD Beechwood on Twitter. They'll take great care of you. The Center for Advanced Dentistry, Dr. Ben Hornstein, and tell them the Dery Brothers sent you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Wait, you said COVID. I thought COVID was over.
Yeah, it ended after the election. That's what I thought.
That's a good bit. Matt and Todd with you. We got to tell you, too, about the breakingt.com/Dery. That's DERY. If you are looking for some gear, it's the holidays. We're getting close to it. Maybe you've got a buddy that's a huge Tribe fan, Browns fan, whatever, and you want to get a cool T-shirt. Todd wears these all the time. I've got the Tristan McKenzie shirt. You go to Breaking T, just the letter T, .com/Dery, DERY, and you see the Cleveland collection on your screen. All right? They've got a new Tribe shirt. It's the Baseball Reference Simulated World Champ shirt. Todd, have you seen this one?
I have not. I have not. Tell me about it.
It says 2020 World Champs Baseball Reference Simulator Cleveland on it, and it's a blue shirt.
That's good stuff.
With red and white. Yes, it's cool. All right? You get that shirt. The new Baker Mayfield shirt, Let's Get Baked, with a picture of Baker Mayfield. The Zach Police.
Baker Mayfield smoking a joint.
No, it just has him with his hands up in the air.
Okay.
But it says, Let's Get Baked. The Immaculate shirt was Zach Plesac. The Immaculate Plesac shirt is sweet. It's got his name on it, the date. The Tristan McKenzie Sticks shirt, which you will see in a couple weeks when I'm back home for Thanksgiving. All of it. The You Know Bro MVP pitch, Jose Ramirez shirt. All of those at Breaking T. All of them at breakingt.com/Dery, DERY. Put in the promo code TRIBECAST10. That's TRIBECAST10, and you'll get 10% off your order at breakingt.com/Dery, DERY. Go there now. All right, Todd, real fast. No surprise last night. Shane Bieber, unanimous for the Cy Young. No shocker. I loved the other night seeing Tito on the screen on MLB Network talking about presenting Kevin Cash with his AL Manager of the Year award. You had some great tweets about that. But Tito looks good. Tito looks healthy. Looks ready to go, hopefully.
You know what? I think Tito needs, as much as baseball needs Tito back and the Indians need Tito back, Tito needs baseball. You know, it's his life. It really is. He loves being at the ballpark, and he loves being around the players, and we'll be happy to have him back. And I'm sure, the game of baseball will be thrilled to have him back. And you know who else will be thrilled to have him back? Cy Young Award winner Shane Bieber. I mean, come on. How about the fact that in the Dolan family ownership era, we've now had CeCe Sabathia in 07, Cliff Lee in 08, 2 times for Corey Kluber, and throw in Shane Bieber in 2020, which is incredible. And Kluber also finished 2 other times in the top 3, if I'm correct. I mean, the pitching factory that the Indians have become is incredible. But the one thing that is most incredible, and while obviously Ruben Niebla and Carl Willis deserve a ton of credit, and it's a testament to Shane Bieber's story and work ethic. Everyone here in Cleveland knows the story. I mean, the guy couldn't get a scholarship. He was a walk-on, and now here he is, Cy Young Award winner. It says a lot about him, his work ethic, his character, and, you know, none of it, you and I did, but no Indians fan knew he existed 3 years ago. And look at him now.
No, it's awesome. It's great to have an identity. It's great to have an organization that has this identity of this pitching factory. I mean, Shane Bieber was so dominant this year. I mean, dominant like Stella, Molly, and Liza in the Dery Brothers Fantasy League dominant. And, it's true. And it just goes in the long line of these arms that keep coming up, keep being replenished. And who knows who's next? You know, there are guys waiting, in waiting coming up. Whether it's Scott Moss or whomever next year that could come into the rotation, another young guy, maybe Cal Quantrill, whomever that gets to work with, like you said, Ruben Niebla, the master, Carl Willis, who, of course, Carl Willis had a Cy Young Award winner in Boston with Rick Porcello. So it's
Felix Hernandez in 2010.
That's right, in Seattle. So that's a good. No matter how bad the outfield is, no matter how much we consider and bang our heads against the wall about who's going to play center, right, left, wherever next year. I think Naylor will be in left, but. Knowing that you have this kind of starting pitching, could be, but knowing that you have this kind of starting pitching puts you at ease a little bit for sure.
Absolutely, and you know what? I'd rather have great pitching than anything else. I just think that is the most important thing. It truly is. I mean, there's nothing more important than having great pitching. You can't do it without it.
All right, as promised, our guest this week here on the Dery Brothers Tribecast, what an honor. For those of you, my Detroit listeners, you remember on Detroit Sports 105 years ago, we used to talk to this guy when he was at ESPN. He's moved on to bigger and better things, whether it's the NHL Network, MLB Network, his bevy of cinema podcasts. He's everywhere. It's the legendary Adnan Virk on the Dery Brothers Tribecast. AV, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Todd, Matty. That kind of introduction, can you save that at my funeral, please? Because no one's going to be saying nice words. Hopefully you guys just go ahead and write that down, send that to my executor of my will, and I look forward to hearing those words when I'm 6 feet under.
I'll tell you what, we missed you. It's been great. It's great to hear your voice. I just love I think Todd and I both agree. I mean, the fact that you're back up and running, you and the family are good. I know you went through a lot at the end of that silly routine at the 4-letter network, and you're killing it now. It's great.
No, I appreciate it, man. Listen, I'm once again proof that there are, unlike what F. Scott Fitzgerald said, there are second acts in American life. And, I think everybody, can understand that, especially with our careers, there's going to be peaks and valleys. It's incredibly rare to have, like my dear friend, the late John Saunders, a 30-year run at ESPN. Like Bob Lee had that kind of run at ESPN. The way Steve Levy's doing Monday Night Football now, Linda Cohn, it's incredibly rare, right? The more norm is what we all have gone through, which is that job's going good, then all of a sudden things happen. You might lose your job, maybe it's a layoff, maybe you get terminated like I did. You go somewhere else, you bounce back. And the good news is this: people do have short memories. And as long as you do a great job at your next employer, that's really all that matters. And the longer that you're at that new job making a positive impact, the more events of the past recede. And I think that that's something that I didn't necessarily realize. I thought, suppose I had a DUI, right, and I lost my job at I would think no matter what, people always just think, oh, yeah, there's Adnan Virk. That's the guy that got the DUI. He got fired by ESPN. This and this happened. But it really isn't the case. It is part of the story, but people don't fixate on it because eventually they just know you as you are, and those new people in your life appreciate you for who you are. So I'm incredibly grateful, boys, and I'm grateful that we're still in touch, and I appreciate your friendship along the way. And I listen to DMs over Twitter and text messages, and trust me, man, I got them all, and I appreciate them all.
Hey, Adnan, speaking of DUIs, what do you think about Tony La Russa joining the DL Central?
That is a seasoned broadcaster. That is a tremendous segue.
You teed that one right up for me.
Listen, again, everybody makes mistakes once. I really do. And listen, within reason, okay? I'm not going to talk about, a serious crime. I'm saying general mistakes, whatever you want to look at it. I always give everybody a second chance. I really do. I think in life, everyone makes a mistake, fine, you get a second chance. And that would include driving while impaired. Now, that doesn't undermine how serious an offense it is. You go behind the wheel of a car and you're intoxicated, you're putting someone's life in danger. Not only your own life, but other people. We all know there are stories we've heard that are countless every day, drunk drivers hurting people. So I'm not trying to minimize that. But my point is simply that, okay, the limit's .08, you drive .10, whatever it is, right? If you get busted, you do the time, you serve your penance, and you move on. But any time, boys, you get burned twice, then you've lost my sympathy, right? The first time I go, I get it. Second time I go, what are you doing? Didn't you learn your lesson? You have to learn lessons in life. That's what life is. And for La Russa to get burned twice for the same infraction, and by the way, this isn't like some sort of callow youth. It isn't like he's 19 years old. He'll wise up eventually. Johnny Manziel or something. No, this is Tony La Russa. Dude, you know better. You have more money than anyone could think of. Get a cab, call somebody, call an Uber, etc. And what makes it particularly bad is his behavior, in which he tried to pull the "Do you know who I am" card. I'm the Hall of Famer. This is a Hall of Famer ring. I'm a baseball. That's just garbage. And I've met La Russa before. He's a nice man. I met him at ESPN. I love those A's teams. I must have been as a kid. I have always found Canseco's arrogance amusing at the time. I don't now. But when I was 12, I'm like, yeah, this guy's awesome. Bash Brothers, let's go. Now I look at it, and I obviously think that whole team was a farce. And I look at La Russa and say, it's an embarrassment that you would do that to yourself. And for the White Sox guys, we already were criticizing this move before any of this came to light.
Right.
Wait, you're 76 years. There's no way. Do any of us think he's going to have a good relationship with a guy like Tim Anderson, young, flashy player? La Russa even criticized the social protests. Are you kidding? what are you, a dinosaur? Like, I already was concerned how well he'd handle analytics, bullpen usage. I wasn't sure about his messaging about social protests, and which is, by the way, his best player is African American. And then you add to the top of it, he's got 2 DUIs from his past. Like, come on, man. And I understand Jerry Ryan's. It's like a page out of the Notebook, right? I'm going to make amends for the past. He's the one that got away. He went to the A's. He went to the Cardinals. I miss him. I love him. Okay, that's cool, but this is real life. Like send him a note, right? Like, send him a card. I wish you never got away. Don't make him the manager of your team, because you could have had Hinch and you could have had Cora.
Yeah, especially, with us being in the AL Central and with the Indians, and, I know Matt is. We don't like to refer to the Tigers by their name. We call them the unnamed team here. So the unnamed team was able to snag A.J. Hinch, which was also a really big deal for the division. I thought for sure he would be the one who ended up with the White Sox. And what we see, Matt and I have talked about this back and forth a ton. First of all, Tony La Russa, let's not forget he's like best friends with Bobby Knight. That's not also a good look for him either. But what do you think about the addition of Hinch into the division, as well as La Russa? And what do you think? I mean, I know you touched on it a little bit, but do you think that is going to end up hampering the White Sox? Do you think that the Tigers will be better with A.J. Hinch? What are your thoughts on that?
I think Hinch is definitely a good hire. And again, everyone gets a second chance. Whatever happened in Houston, however much he was involved, wasn't involved, he knew it was happening, didn't stop it. Okay, fine. You take your punishment. And again, I don't agree with some of these theorizing saying that, well, you know what? The 1 year that he was gone for, it was only a 60-game season. It was only 37.5% of the season. He hasn't paid enough penance. Again, that's not up to me, okay? Like, if you get to prison for a year and you do good service, or for whatever reason, actually, no, here's a better example. You get sent to prison, and then because of coronavirus, they're letting out some prisoners early, and all of a sudden your prisoner sentence is only 4 months. Well, again, that's not up to me. Like, that's just how life works. So I don't think that Hinch or Cora should have paid a more severe price just because this year was a washout of a year and only 60 games. They were banned for a year. They took their punishment. They're back. And it's all fair game. And I think at this point, you can be angry about what happened, certainly. You can hold a grudge against them if you like. That's fine. Certainly, if you're not a fan of the Astros, I totally get that. But they deserve that chance to be back. And I think for Hinch specifically, that's a great hire. Listen, he's a smart guy. He's got a good balance of having played, but also analytics. I think he's good with, Latin players, people of color. I think he's able to relate in different manners, whereas I think some of these guys might be a little more old school. So I think Hinch is a perfect fit. What is interesting, guys, is this. If you look at Detroit and their core and Houston's, I look at Detroit's guys and I go, okay, I don't know who their Correa is. I don't know who their real star is. I don't know who their Springer is. But
they don't have that.
Right, they don't have that, right? But Torkelson's a stud. Okay, fine. So you're going to have one guy's apparently a great hitter, or going to be a great hitter. You've got those big young arms, Casey Mize, Screwball, etc. So I think that they're definitely trending up. I don't know if they're going to be one of these Astros teams. Like, if the three of us are going to talk 3 years from now and go, oh, yeah, remember when the Tigers won the 2024 World Series? We could see that happening. I don't see that. But I think they get to 500. That would be a good accomplishment next year, and continue to build off that. And they've got ownership, by the way. You always forget, Detroit's, for a town which has been so depressed and hit hard by economics over the years, the Ilitch family is willing to spend. Like, if there's a reason to spend, they're going to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make some moves in a couple of years to add to that core and try to make them into a real juggernaut.
Adnan Virk with us, MLB Network. Heard him on MLB Radio this weekend as well. You're around all these, former players, analysts and stuff. You're sitting in the studio hosting shows. What's the talk about the Indians? There's so much respect always for the front office. Obviously, the payroll is coming way down. We'll talk about Francisco Lindor, but what are folks saying about the Tribe?
Well, I was on last night with Dan Plesac, who, of course, is a great guy. His nephew, Zach, is on the Indians, and Dan O'Dowd, the former Rockies GM. And we were, of course, talking Indians because Bieber won the Cy Young. And we were just talking about, what a great job the Indians have done with their pitching in terms of, deeming Corey Kluber expendable and Trevor Bauer and Mike Clevenger, because they realize they've got these studs. And Bieber has just been extraordinary. And you guys get the joy of being able to watch him every 5 days. And when we were looking at those numbers, every single thing was like the fifth lowest ERA in the divisional era. Anytime your numbers are within shouting distance, I remember Doc Gooden 85 was unhittable, 1.53, and the fact that Bieber was within shouting range, 1.63, the fact that it only took him 62 innings for 100 strikeouts, it's just crazy numbers. So it starts with Bieber. Everyone raves about him naturally, and you look at the rest of their depth, and obviously, like I mentioned, Dan's son, Zach, obviously a good starter. We know what happened, issues that McClevenger off the field, but whatever. Again, mistakes happen, you move on. They've certainly got depth in their rotation. You look at Carrasco and others. The concern is always their offense, and particularly the outfield. You just go like, God, you think of today's game, you've got so many outfielders that got some punch for the Indians. The Tribe just didn't have that all year, as you guys know. And Ramirez is obviously a talented player. He's finished third in the MVP twice before. I think he's going to finish third again this year. We'll find out later today. Very streaky player. I remember I had egg all over my face because last year I kept saying, Ramirez is going to win the MVP. And then he had just a historically terrible first half. He bounces back second half, and, of course, this year he's in the MVP conversation again. But the two biggest things are, one, that everyone around the office says, hey, how sick is Bieber? He's awesome. And two, where's Lindor going to go? That's too bad, the Indians, the cash-strapped Indians. I almost feel like they're not the Cleveland Indians. They're always referred to as the cash-strapped Indians because everyone knows that money plays such a big part in this team. And for Lindor, we were talking to my man J.P. Morosi yesterday. He said the two teams, and I believe he was currying favor with me with the second one, but he said the Mets. And we said, okay, Steve Cohen, obviously, sure, he's going to spend money. He can make things happen. And then when he was clearly just trying to make a patriot out of me, he mentioned the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
And O'Dowd did whisper to me, he goes, no, listen, I think the Blue Jays are in. He goes, I think they're going to make a run because Byron Atkins, Cleveland connection, they've been pretty honest. And generally, having been from Toronto, I know they're not going to be the big spenders. Rogers Communication doesn't want to be the ones that are throwing dollars around, but they've kind of said, no, we're going to be aggressive here. So the fact that the Jays and the Mets could both be suitors for Lindor, here was the big thing for me for Toronto. I said, okay, if I'm Cleveland, you got to get back someone good. And O'Dowd whispered to me, because I don't even know if the package they get back is as good as what they got for Clevenger. And I said, really? I said, but Lindor's a study. He said, you're only getting 1 year with the guy. Like, you're getting 1 year, he's 26, and Cleveland's over a barrel. They know that they've got to trade him sooner rather than later to get value back. So my whole thing was this: if I'm Cleveland, okay, give me like one of those blue chip prospects from Toronto. Now, you're not getting Bo Bichette, you're not getting Vladdy Jr. Maybe it's Lourdes Gurriel, maybe it's Teoscar Hernandez just got a silver slug. And again, O'Dowd's like, I don't think you're giving up those guys either. I'm like, oh my god! Like, and for Cleveland, I'm like, hang on a second, I got to lose Lindor, and I'm not getting one of these top four guys. That would be awfully heartbreaking to me from an Indians.
I'll take Kevin Biggio. He's perfect for the Indians. That's the guy I really want.
Okay, well, and by the way, I think he said he was in the mix. As I started going through those names, I said, hey, no Bichette, Vladdy. He's like, of course. Then I said Teoscar, Lourdes. He goes, I don't think I can dig up those guys either. Then I think it was like, okay, maybe Kevin Biggio, Danny Jansen. Somebody, he's like, yeah, one of those guys. Like, all right. So Kevin Biggio, I could see that move happening. In addition, obviously, to an arm or somebody else, obviously. It's not going to be a 1-for-1 for Lindor. We all know that. Probably a 3-for-1.
It's funny because all these guys like Dan O'Dowd, when you talk to former players, I think they'll tell you, wait a minute, that package for Clevenger did not turn out, at least yet, to be anything special, although Josh Naylor looked like Babe Ruth in the playoff games. But this, to me, you look at what the Mets have or what the Blue Jays have, and heck, the Angels, who were GM-less at the time, and we talked about it before you came on, a guy like Walsh or a guy like Marsh, those guys are better than Josh Naylor. So I'm with you, Adnan. I would hope you would get at least some sort of stud positional prospect, something they did not get in the Clevenger deal.
I would think so. And I think ultimately, listen, you're gambling against other people. You start pushing up the number. You go, listen, do you all know how good Lindor is? Do I have to remind you about this? Like this free agent shortstop class coming up is going to be just ridiculous. Like you're going to have 5 guys eligible next year if they don't sign extensions in Carlos Correa, in Trevor Story, in Javier Baez, and Corey Seager, and Francisco Lindor. And I understand right now, obviously, we're in the midst of a pandemic. No one's getting paid right now. But, just wait. These guys are all going to get paid the riches. God willing, next year at some point we're going to get a vaccine. At some point there'll be fans in the stands, maybe reduced capacities, et cetera. But the point is money will come back to Major League Baseball, and all 5 of those guys will be available in the next year. So I don't think teams can sit there and go, we'll just get somebody else. We'll just get Seager. We'll just get Baez. But no, there's only going to be so many, dancing chairs available. So I hope teams don't underestimate Lindor and just say, listen, give up a blue chip elite position prospect. Like I said, an arm as well in the minors, hopefully an everyday player currently right now, and go from there. Because that's the other point O'Dowd made too. He goes, I don't think Cleveland just wants all prospects. I think they want some everyday guys. So no, of course. So give me an everyday player that can slot in the lineup right now. Give me a couple prospects, including one blue chip, and then we're talking.
I think the thing that the Mookie Betts deal taught everybody was that maybe, and again, this could be totally because it's Los Angeles and it's a unique situation, get the guy in your building for a year, show him what kind of culture you have, and then hopefully he likes it, he sticks around, and he signs an extension. So, that would be something that I believe the Indians brass will be selling as well when they trade Frankie Lindor, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the other part I asked. I said, so let's suppose I'm the Blue Jays. Can I negotiate with Lindor before the trade happens? Like, can we at least agree to a conditional framework of a trade? But I want to talk to you if he signs an extension. And that's it. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, it's not. But I don't think Lindor's going to say yes. I was like, really? He goes, unless it is a Mookie Betts type offer. Unless the Blue Jays said, hey, Frankie, we're trading for it. And by the way, here's $365 million. Just sign here. Okay, cool. He goes, but if you go, hey, here's the deal. Can we just talk to Francisco? Sure. We're thinking like 240, 260, 8 years. He's like, I want to test the market. Like, okay. Like, it's not agreed upon necessarily when the trade happens. So that's another wrinkle as well. Like, which team says, hey, we want him because we want him long term, i.e. the Mets. We can spend money. We want him here for a while. Or is it a team, and I can't think of one off the top of my head, who would just want him for a year. But if you were like, all right, if we got Lindor, we'd be over the top. I think every team that wants to get him is looking to build better and isn't winning the World Series next season.
Do you talk to enough people that do look, and look, Francisco Lindor is a fantastic player and a fantastic talent. But let's be honest here. The last 2 years with runners in scoring position, clutch hitting, he's not been great. His numbers overall this year across the board were not great. Do you still think he's a top 10 player in the league, though? Because you could make the argument Jose Ramirez is a better player.
Yeah, that's the good news for Cleveland, I think, is you say, listen, for all the talk about Lindor being the face of the franchise, et cetera, and I get that a part of that is youth is an element of that, and, obviously 5-tool player, all the rest of it. But Ramirez is the guy who gets up, like, this is the third time he's going to be up for MVP, like third time a third-place finish. So I think you're right. If you're Cleveland, as much as hand-wringing as there could be, you'd say, listen, that division, nobody's running away with it, okay? Minnesota won it a year ago. They kind of fell down to earth a little bit. Still a really good team, obviously. I like Baldelli a lot. Okay, Tigers are improving the hinge, but they're not going anywhere, at least for 2021. Yes, White Sox are really good. Who knows how this La Russa mess unfolds, but definitely lots of talent there. But for Cleveland, you go, hey, we're right in the mix, man. Like, this is a 4-horse race. Like, it's only the Royals you see are out of this. So, fine, deal Lindor and get a couple players back. But Ramirez is still the guy. You still have to improve, like I said, the outfield offense. You hope that Naylor can continue to do what he did in the playoffs. And you can kind of talk yourself into saying, hey, listen, Lindor is not the be-all, end-all. And those are definitely numbers you can point to. I mean, I think that the opposite of that is that, okay, fine, he's 26. He's going to have some slumps here and there. But, yeah, it's not – like, every guy's got holes if you look at him. And it's not like – put it this way. Lindor is not Betts. He's not Trout, right? Like, there's certain guys you go, okay, they're top 3, top 4 in the game. Lindor's not that. But in answer to your question, I still think he's top 10, top 15, especially when I look at the total package.
Adnan Virk with us, of course, MLB Network, MLB Radio. What else with the Indians, brother, that you like? You mentioned the pitching before. And how's free agency going to work? Look at a guy like Cesar Hernandez that won a Gold Glove on a 1-year deal. He made just over $6 million last year. Carlos Santana is a free agent. Could the Indians bring him back on a minor league deal? I mean, do you think that some of these guys late in free agency that are going to end up signing for like cheap because they just – that might help the Indians, right, because of this pandemic?
I was about to say, listen, the free agent market is going to be depressed. I think that the top guys are going to get paid. Trevor Bauer just won a Cy Young. He's a free agent. The last free agent to hit the market win a Cy Young was Clemens back in 2004 with Houston. He stayed with Houston. But the timing in some ways is great. In some ways it's terrible. Like, yes, you'd rather win a Cy Young and be a free agent than not. But Bauer's up against a situation where we have this pandemic where the league lost $3 billion. So it may help for a guy like Bauer because, listen, he only wants a 1-year deal anyways. He says, I'd like to see if that actually happens. If a team says, hey, here's 3 years, $100 million, he's going to turn that down and say, no, I'd rather just have a 1-year, $35 million deal. Like, we'll see once the agent gets in his ear. But I think guys like Bauer, I think Springer, he could get 4 years, $80 million. I think 5 years, $100 million for Springer is not out of the question. Stroman, you saw, stayed with the Mets. He accepted their qualifying offer. I think Real Muto is going to get paid. I think he could be pushing $100 million. He's probably the best catcher in baseball in the conversation with Yasmani Grandal. The Mets clearly need a catcher after losing Darno. The Yankees with Gary Sanchez's issues, they need a catcher, so maybe they get Real Muto. But after that, I mean, I think a lot of these guys are going to be looking at the numbers and go, really, that's it? Like, what do you want? Like 2 years ago, everyone was complaining about potential collusion. Last year was a little better, but again, you've seen this really depressed market for the so-called middle class of baseball players. And that's only going to get exacerbated more now because of the lack of revenue. And I'll give you an example of guys like Marcelo Zuna. He's probably, top 5, top 7 MVP voting. We'll find out today. And yet he signed a 1-year deal. He may only get another 1-year deal. Maybe he gets a 2-year deal. Like I was talking with Joel Sherman of the New York Post. I'm like, you don't think Ozuna can get like a 3-year, $30 million deal? He's like, I don't know, man. Like in this market, it's going to be tough. You might just get a 1-year, $10 million deal. So that's good news to the Indians. You mentioned Cesar Hernandez. That's what Plesac and I were saying yesterday. When we saw the AL Gold Glove winner, especially the infield, you go, what? Like, you're not used to seeing these names. Like, the fact that there was no actual coaches, GMs, being involved, it was strictly by the numbers. That's how you get Evan White at first base and J.P. Crawford at short and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa at third and Cesar Hernandez at second. And good for them. Listen, Gold Gloves are meaningful to guys, and that's good news for Hernandez. And I wouldn't overlook something like that because there are fans who watch, who don't follow a team day in, day out, but they watch the Gold Gloves. They go, oh, Cesar Hernandez. Didn't know he was that great at second base. All right, cool. I'll pay attention to a guy like that. And you mentioned Santana. Listen, I always love Santana because he's a huge OBP guy. Like sometimes the batting average, you go, man, this guy walks a ton. So hopefully the Indians can give him back. He's always been a big part of that offense, especially in the heart of the order.
Before we go, Adnan, let's do some rapid-fire, non-baseball related questions for you. Because as everybody knows, you are a true man of the people, very well-rounded, worldly individual. So I got a couple questions for you. Number one, correct me if I'm wrong, you named one of your son's middle names is Scorsese after Mario Scorsese. That's correct.
That is correct. Yeah, my eldest son, Yusuf, his middle name is Scorsese. Which people often wonder, they go, so your wife is okay with this? I'm like, oh, no, trust me. She loves him, too. Like, Goodfellas, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver. I can't wait till he gets to be able to watch these movies, by the way. He's only 12 right now. But, yes, we honored him in honor of Marty. And of all the people I've spoken to, I've met DeNiro, I've met Pacino, have yet to meet Scorsese. And that's literally all I'm going to say.
Oh.
Hopefully I can have, like, a feature-length interview with him one day. But literally, if I just have 10 seconds, like, hey, my kid's middle name is your last name. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Correct me if I'm – and your fourth child also – middle name is either Pacino or DeNiro, or am I making that up too?
No, you're right. So he's Pacino. That's Maz Pacino.
That's what
oh my God.
So who's better, Bobby D or Al?
So it's amazing conversation to have because I remember somebody told me years ago. They said, I think De Niro might be the better actor, but Pacino's more entertaining. And I said, okay, define better and entertaining. Those are very broad terms. He said, well, I think if you just gave any script to De Niro, I think he could do it, like literally any role. If it was a monster movie, if it was a buddy comedy, if it was a dark drama, like whatever it is, like De Niro, you give him a week, he's like, okay, like I'll do some research, and he would nail the role. And he's proven, by the way, with the second act of comedy, you never expected De Niro to be this funny, and he's been doing that for like 20 years. Because whereas Pacino, I'm not sure. Right away I argued. I go, no, listen, dude, Pacino's done Shakespeare. Like, De Niro never does the stage. To me, that's a big part of it. Can you do theater? Like, Al still does theater. Like, he's done Richard III. He's done King Lear. Like, he did a documentary called Looking for Richard, which is about his love of Shakespeare. Like he's more than just a guy yelling hoo-ah. Like, don't mistake this here about Al. Like you go back to those 70s movies and you watch the first two Godfathers, you watch Serpico, you watch Dog Day Afternoon. Like, he revolutionized acting, at least for people that age. But then the argument for De Niro, you go, well, dude, if you want influence, nothing's more influential than Raging Bull. He's the first guy that did that. He put on 60 pounds for the role. He was so good, he was actually convincing as a boxer, actually boxed a couple of guys at the time. And Jake LaMotta was like, dude, he's actually pretty good. Like, if he wanted to do this, he could be like a decent boxer. Like, that's insane that an actor could do that kind of commitment, not to mention Taxi Driver and Goodfellas. And as I mentioned, the comedies themselves. Listen, don't sleep on Analyze This or Midnight Run, the rest of it. So I think I go back to what my buddy said. He goes, De Niro might be the more better actor in terms of more range, but Al is one that's more entertaining. And I'll tell you this story. I was at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I was there to watch The Irishman when it premiered last year. Sorry, it was the New York Film Festival. I've been to the Tribeca Film Festival, which is obviously De Niro's, but that was a different story. But The Irishman last year, and at the end of the movie, they had each member of the cast come out. So they obviously, the more supporting minor characters come out first, and then, different, Anna Paquin's there, okay, sure. And they're building up, obviously, to it. Then De Niro came out, and it was a good ovation. But Pacino, the place went crazy. Like, it was like a rock star. It was like Mick Jagger. And I remember thinking, like, oh, maybe this is true. Like, De Niro, everyone respects him. He's certainly well-liked. Everyone appreciates how great he is. But when Al came out, crowd went crazy, dude. It was like a rock star thing. So maybe Pacino's more popular one.
You mean people were still awake at the end of that movie? I know you loved it, Adnan.
Great movie.
I know you loved it. I thought it was a little slow for me. Okay, next quick question. Ryan Russillo and you together on ESPN Radio, when you used to fill in, that was easily my favorite combo, and I always wished that the two of you would have been that 1 to 4 slot together whenever it was.
Thanks,
what's your best Russillo story?
Well, listen, he's a guy who does not miss going to the gym. I think we all know that. That was often well documented. But he did not like the fact that people would often bring up fighting with him. Like, people would just, for some reason, like whenever we would do like life advice, people were like, okay, we're still up. I'm going to fight, blah, blah, blah. And so one time he says to me, he goes, why does everyone always just want to talk fighting with me? And I'm like, well, again, it kind of becomes well documented that you're at the gym every day, you have pretty big biceps, and you're from Boston. The fact that you're, forgive the term, a masshole means that you've got an edge to you. Everyone knows you're kind of a surly guy. You're not me. I'm a pretty friendly guy. I'm warm and inviting. Those are not words I'd use to describe you. I would describe you as being, guarded, a little bit distrustful. But once people get to know you, many people in New England, once you get to know Ryan, he's a great guy. He's a friend for life. He's generous and all the rest of it. So eventually he got annoyed that somebody again called him and said, hey, what about if I was in a fight, blah, blah. So we go off the air, we got a commercial break, and I said to him, I go, well, how many fights have you been in? And he's like, and he kind of just looks at me and goes, fights are like taking a punch. I'm like, I didn't think there was a differentiation. I go, taking a punch. He's like, 27. And I start laughing. I go, I've never been in a fight. I've never had anyone hit me in the face. Okay, I think most people are like me, Ryan. I think 27 is a large number.
I've also never been hit in the face in my life, nor have I don't even think I've thrown a punch. I don't know about Matt. I don't know about you, but I definitely punched. Yeah, last question.
Wait, hold on. Todd, I got to cut you off. Early 2000s, when I was doing Pistons pre and post game on the radio, we had this little fraternity of pre and post game guys. You look up now and you go, Ryan Russillo was doing the Celtics, George Sedano was doing the Heat. It's just kind of funny how these guys they've sprung into bigger and better things, and here I am doing the Dery Brothers Tribecast.
Listen, this is the pinnacle. Working with me is the pinnacle. Let's be honest. Come on, Deez.
It's amazing.
No, Matt and I have always wanted to do something like this together, and we have a lot of fun doing it, and we've gotten great feedback from it. So we'll keep doing it as long as everyone wants us to do it. All right. So last question for you, Adnan. You came in on ESPN. You were Canadian guy, not a big college basketball or college football guy, and they throw you in, and now you have to learn these two brand new sports and players. Which was harder to learn, and which do you miss covering more?
Oh, college football was definitely harder. I mean, it was whoa. I remember looking at that schedule when they first told me. I'm like, I'm Canadian. What are we doing here? I wouldn't know the ACC Atlantic from the ACC Coastal. When people would joke with the Pac-10, the Pac-12, wait, what's the joke? I'm like, oh, they expanded to 12? When were they 10? Okay, what? It was that bad. I remember thinking, Big 12, Big 10, what are these names? It's when people see CFL names and they laugh, they go, Edmonton Eskimos, Calgary Stampeders. That was me looking at all these names going, how am I supposed to even memorize? I got terrified. I'd watch College Game Day and they wouldn't have the name of the team, they'd have the logo. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to learn what Baylor's logo is. It was frightening. I mean, and it took me at least 2 or 3 years to really, I'd say at least 2 full years of feeling comfortable with it. And our research department was extraordinary. I mean, the people at ESPN, you can never criticize behind the scenes. They're awesome. Our producers, the researchers, the directors, I mean, they really put me in a place to succeed. And of course, the analysts. And the fact I got to work with Danny Cannell and Joey Galloway and then Jesse Palmer, fellow Canadian. I mean, those guys really helped me out. Kind of all right, listen. And I think Steve Levy put it well once recently. I heard him on a podcast. He said, I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And that was the key. I didn't try to overextend myself and start to sound smart. So, remember what happened in the 87 Sugar Bowl? Because I wouldn't know. So just focus on the games at hand. Simple questions to the analyst. No one's asking you for your take on it. They're asking you to extract the opinions of others. And that I can do, right? If you're naturally inquisitive and curious and watching the games as they're unfolding. As a studio host, I was able to do that. So it wasn't like I had to be a college football historian. But it was definitely a challenge. College basketball wasn't as hard because, again, as Canadians, I had actually covered the Final Four in 2009, which was in Detroit. And we always look, because there's always a few Canadians that always do really well in college basketball. So whether it was Andrew Wiggins or, Bennett, there was always a few other guys that I'd always be looking at going, okay, these guys are pretty good. So, and especially the tournament, I would always watch the tournament. It was always popular in Canada. So college basketball was easier of the two. College football was the steeper learning curve. I probably did more college football because it was 15-hour Saturdays, which I definitely do not miss.
Those were long days, man. Those were long days.
Dude, I don't miss it. Last week, my son was laughing. I was watching the Notre Dame game, Notre Dame Clemson. And I said, well, it's not the same without Trevor Lawrence, but I watched a little bit. He was like, hey, remember those Saturdays? I'm like, oh my God. When I try to tell people, and you guys know in the business, it's not always glamorous here. I would walk in the building at 11:30 a.m. Saturday morning, and I would leave Sunday morning at 2:30 in the morning, maybe 2:45, depending on how the Pac-12 went. listen, it was a fun experience because of the guys that I was with, but I never said to myself, I miss those 15-hour days in college football. And by the way, and the college basketball guys, they were great, and those shifts were half. So I probably missed college basketball more just because the guys were also great. LaFonso Ellis, Seth Greenberg, Jay Williams, Dan Dockich, who I love. I mean, all those guys were hysterical. And we only had to work 6 hours, plus the game itself. College basketball is like, hour 40, hour 45. Yeah, I really like the pacing of that. College football, I found, like, God, these Big 12 games are 4 hours. This is insane. They're all 4 hours. All of them. It's brutal.
You just brought up a name. Dan Dockich. People either love him or can't stand him. There's no in between.
Yeah, and I loved him. We worked together. The first time was on a Mike and Mike shift. And I remember thinking, like, who is this guy? And they're like, oh, he's from Indiana. He does college basketball. I'm like, oh, God, I didn't know who he was. This is like maybe 2013. And within 5 minutes, I loved him. Like, he was so outspoken and so funny and so very colorful. And as you guys know, the best thing in radio, you got to be opinionated. Yeah. That's why, as nice as what you said about me and Ryan's relationship, I never really thought I was great on radio. I thought it was okay. I was definitely fine to jump off the bench, but by nature, I'm just not super opinionated. If you ask me 10 topics, I'm not going to have a strong opinion on 10 of them. I'll have an opinion on maybe 6 of them. The other 4, we'll figure it out. Dan Dockich on every single opinion. Is the sky blue? What do you think of evolution? What do you think of the election? Like on every single topic, he would have a strong take. And that's what makes him great on radio. So we had a blast because I found everything he said to be either funny or interesting. And he enjoyed me because who wouldn't want a guy who laughs at all his jokes? And in fact, after the show, I gave him a ride somewhere. I remember because he'd flown into Hartford and his bags were lost. I mean, we became fast friends, but I've always loved Dawkins. And I agree with you. He definitely is polarizing. You ask the wrong person, they get angry. Oh, I can't stand that guy. What he said is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nah, you know what? I just judge people by how they are with me, and I've always loved Dawkins.
All right, AV, it was great catching up, man. We love you. Thanks so much for the time.
The Dery Brothers, the best brothers since the Stallone brothers. I appreciate you both talking about it. Be well. Thanks, Adnan.
There he is, Adnan Virk from MLB Radio, MLB Network, NHL Network, all over the place joining us. Todd, how much fun was that?
I mean, is there a better dude in sports media than Adnan? I mean, what a great guy. That was so much fun.
It was, and what he went through. If people don't know, he got let go at ESPN years ago. There was some sort of scandal with inside information or memos that were being shared, and they accused Adnan of sharing inside memos or something. And
long story short, he got totally fucked.
Yeah,
he didn't deserve it.
I mean,
I'm serious. He didn't deserve it.
It was horrible. And when
they were deciding to make an example out of the one person who shouldn't be made an example of.
Right. And, I was doing radio in Detroit years ago and had him on the show. And he was just great. We just kept going to him because he just knows everything. You could have him on talking college football in Michigan or Michigan State basketball, Michigan basketball, whatever it is. And even NFL stuff, he was great. He knows, and he loves baseball and he loves the Jays, and he was tremendous. So we appreciate him certainly coming on. All right, that'll do it for another edition of the Dery Brothers Tribecast. Thank you for listening. Thanks, of course, to Dr. Ben Hornstein, the Center for Advanced Dentistry, and also our friends at breakingt.com/Dery. Get your T-shirts. A lot of new ones out there. All right, Todd. Well, who knows when we'll have news on this organization and everything else, but we'll be back soon.
I'm sure once Frankie's traded, we'll hop on here for an emergency podcast to discuss that deal.
And we're brought to you, of course, and found at waitingfornextyear.com. We'll talk to you soon.